individual liberty, private property, and limited government by developing a better understanding of history, political philosophy, as well as policies and their ramifications. Thanks for joining, and remember, you are the power.
Good morning. It's so great to be with you. Bucky and Kevin the Russo. Liberty Revolt on 1360 KHNC, your morning show every weekday from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Today's weather, it's going to be a little bit chilly. It's going to be a little bit windy, but I think it's going to be better than it was yesterday, and it's certainly going to be better than it was the couple days prior. The sun has risen, and it is another gorgeous, beautiful day. We have Yvonne with us. Kevin, Yvonne, how are you guys doing today?
We're doing great. Thank you, Bucky. See, you made that contagious now.
doing very well. We had a great first hour in here for those of you who missed it. But hey, we're going to give an even better second hour here at the Liberty Revolt. We want to once again thank our sponsors. We got Tahibo Tea out there. If you are desperate for something healthy to help, something that isn't full of preservatives, something that's not full of sugars and all that other stuff, something that's going to help make you feel more alert, more relaxed. Oxymoron there, I know, but it somehow does both simultaneously. We have Tahibo Tea here at the studio, one of our major sponsors. So,
Kevin,
please.
Not the world's greatest Tahibo Tea salesman.
I know. Look, man, my plugs. Look, I don't plug a lot, okay? So here I am trying to plug. I got to get better at it. Practice makes perfect.
But it doesn't do
Bucky.
the plugging.
No, I don't. You're the plug master over here.
Hey, it's so great to be with you guys. So Yvonne, if you guys missed it, we introduced her in the first segment. She's a friend of mine. She runs Perspectives 101. It's this little get-togethers that she has where she brings on awesome guests to give talks about all kinds of things related to policy, related to philosophy, related to Colorado politics. Just a wealth of tremendous people and knowledge that Kevin and I have both gone to. We try to go as often as we can and see, because it really is cool events. And you have an event coming up. Can you speak on that?
Yes, actually, we have an event this Wednesday at Message of Life Ministries in Logan, and Jimmy on a day, along with Dr. Tom Perrell, will be speaking on the Northern industry in Colorado. So there's just a lot to be considering with all these things that are going on. So there's so many topics to consider. This is just one. But one of the things Kevin said just on the prior section segment is we're leading into this perspective thing.
Yes.
And perspective is everything, which is why we called it Perspectives 101. But I have what I call the unique gift of viewing my country through the eyes of a foreigner. As a very small child, I was taken away from my country because my father was transferred to another country. And I lived outside of the United States for 15 years, returning at almost 18%. Pretty much I did was serve my country. So why? Why does somebody who doesn't even know their country, who comes back? And it's that perspective thing. I had been told, because I haven't really lived it much, what my country was like.
Yeah.
And then I lived something else. And when I came back, it was clearly evident what the difference was. So again, talking about perspective, the woman who's going to be speaking this Wednesday is from Peru. It seems like one of the presentations that people like the most, which you guys mentioned just before, is our panel presentations. We've had 3 of those. People who come from other countries, often from socialist countries, and giving perspective. And so I think part of what's happening in our country when people don't really see the path that they're going down is a lack of perspective to see what else is out there.
Yes.
I love the concept of people who go on missions, the people who go to Peace Corps, people who go to other countries as military people, because it allows us that priceless perspective to be able to understand and love our own country.
Well, tell us a little bit more about who she is, what to anticipate, and where people can go to check it out.
Sure. Juliana Day is originally from Peru, and she is the president of Life Decisions Organization and was a sponsor of Prop 115. And she's so much more than that. But basically, it's going to be an update on the realities of abortion, where we plan, where we are, where we maybe should go. So just with an open mind. And I think the people that come to listen to this, if they have an open mind and an open heart, Americans are people that have a great heart. I mean, we care about our pets. We care about not depleting species. You know, we care about nature. We care about our planet. I think it's time that we start looking inside again and care about our own humanity.
Yeah.
About our own children and about our own.
No, and I totally agree with that. Perspective is one of the hardest things to attain because you actually have to think outside of yourself, and a lot of people have a lot of trouble thinking outside of themselves. And I was talking about tabling earlier, and we're in the next segment here. I'm actually going to dive into it a little bit, but you start having these conversations, you realize very quickly that it is a lack of perspective that guides a lot of people's motivations against our liberties, against our freedom. It's a lack of understanding just how important it is that we aren't like all these other countries. How important it is that we don't have the same processes in place as your Europes and stuff like that, and your Asias, where you see this move towards collectivization in Europe, and they don't move towards it. It is in their bones down in Southeast Asia, the collectivization, right? As rather than appreciating how significant it is that we aren't like so much of the world, they just say, well, everybody else does it, so why shouldn't we? Everybody else has this, so why shouldn't we? And it's like, because you're missing the perspective on just what it means to have what we have here.
And we've lived in the light for so long.
Yep.
So we'll get back to that.
Absolutely. You're listening to the Perspective Report on 1360 KHNC. All right, so Bucky's still going to be able to talk, but I muted us. Right, that light is blinking great.
Kevin is talking over me right now, but that's okay. Thanks for joining us on the live stream. We sure do appreciate it. Let me know how the audio is. We are still working out all of the logistics of getting the audio correct.
Because I know that you really want, you're trying to make eye contact.
I know yesterday there was a little bit of an echo, and so that's what I'm concerned about. I can't listen to it until after the fact, so I really don't have a great way of testing it. That is why I rely on your feedback. So I really do appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Oh, Brett, thank you so much, man. It's so great to have you with us on so many of our live streams. Ryan, by the way, he's running for Senate. Are you running for Senate in Colorado District 8?
I may not be a doctor, but I know this. You wouldn't leave your loved one in a box.
Ryan?
For 15 years, but you can do it.
Are you there?
Just let me see it before it hurts to run someone.
Oh, you're running for House District 4. Anyways, we're going to bring you on real soon. We can't talk about your campaign too much until I do a little bit more research. See, because of FCC rules, we're actually not allowed to bring on a candidate who's actively campaigning without bringing on all of their competitors. And so this was more of an issue when we were having only one show a week because we only had 1 hour. And so what was happening is we'd bring on, I think we brought on Governor Lopez, and then we had to bring on all of the other people running in the gubernatorial race. And that basically ate up all the shows for a while. We're coming back on the air.
You want me to pick up on that darkness and light thing that I left off?
I will lead into it. Good morning.
And we're back, like scoliosis.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bucky LaRusso, Kevin Dillon, here with joined by Yvonne Paez.
I thought you were going to go with the Paris.
So we are talking about perspective a lot today, and Yvonne, you were, before we went to that last break, you were kind of getting into this dichotomy of the light and the dark that we're currently seeing. So I'm interested to hear you finish your thought on that really quick.
Sure, and part of the lack of perspective, right, is how can you appreciate the light if you don't know what darkness looks like?
Exactly.
And in the United States, we've lived in the light for so long that people not only can't appreciate the darkness, they haven't seen darkness, they haven't, so how can you understand something you don't know? And I always say that when my countrymen don't get it, and it, like you said before, it can drive certain frustration, but I cannot be frustrated with my countrymen for not knowing what I know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's pretty frustrating.
Where I have been. So how can I judge them for not knowing what I know, for not having the perspective that I have? So that's where we have to exercise that patience, but understand that perspective is matter.
Exactly.
He wanted some stories. Let me give you a story of perspective. First of all, with kind of things that are going on now, I mean, people think that, poor countries are third world countries, and it's the lack of money that makes a third world country. And we can call them developing nations, we can call them whatever you want to call them, but the understanding that they're nations that are not doing well, that are not moving forward as quickly or well as they should be. But so it's not derogative, it's just calling a spade a spade. And so they're not poor on account of that. It's often the lack of law and order, the lack of public safety, and the corruption that's in them that causes them to be in the third class, which in essence kills economies. So they become poor because of policy. So they're not just third world because they're poor. So it all leads to something else. So I wanted to share. Let me put some people, some Americans, and what it's going to look like here if we don't, figure some things out. And I come from a place where there's walls around all the houses, and it's not like here you have open, little picket fences and things like that, and open areas. That really isn't like that down there. You have big walls around your house. There is broken glass cemented into the edge of that wall. So if somebody wants to come over, they have to get cut by glass. That was my first house when we first got, not mine, but my family's first house when we got to where we live. I want to talk badly about any one country or another. It's Latin America, and a lot of the things that go on in Latin America are similar from one country to another.
Yeah.
And later in a different country, same thing, big walls, and you can never leave your house unattended. And I mean never.
Yeah.
If you were to leave your house unattended for even 30 minutes, everything you've worked for that you have in your home would be gone. You could be back, and you come back, and it would be gone. Jesus. So then we have people, and of course, it's a place where a lot of people need jobs. So you employ a housekeeper, you employ a gardener, and you spread the wealth. You're paying a gardener and a housekeeper and everything, and that doesn't make you rich. Oh my God, you had a maid. My maid had a maid. Okay, so I need you guys to wrap your head around this kind of thing. Everybody helps everybody, and everybody employs everybody. So I'm talking about a world maybe you haven't lived in.
Yes.
But this is what happens, and so now if you're going to leave your house, you have to make sure you have either a housekeeper or a caretaker to watch over your house while you're not there.
I'm just still struck by the fact that you're not exaggerating when you say you cannot leave your house unattended.
Oh, absolutely, and we're going there. So see, I see these things coming around the corner because I've been there and I can smell this stuff before I even see it. But Americans have not been in that position unless they've lived in some really lousy places, which we have some of those on.
We
in
used
our
to say you could tell the dividing line between the nice city and the bad city because as soon as you started seeing bars on the windows.
Exactly. Oh, I see that on TV and I go, oh. I was watching a show and I saw exactly that. I'm like, oh, like back home, those. Yeah. And it was in New York, and it was those scrolling kind of metal things that go down and you lock them to the ground. I'm like, oh, like back home, And when I say back home, I mean Latin America. So that's not where I want to live. But
no,
I mean not Latin America. I mean like places that you have to bar everything out.
It's funny if you're ever driving through LA and you're asking your question, is this a nice neighborhood or not? Just look at the windows. If they've got bars on them, no.
Exactly.
Although it's getting closer and closer to that being every neighborhood in LA, like you were saying.
And it's funny that you mentioned that because when I out-processed from the Army, it was in California, and there was not enough housing on post, so they gave you something to go out on the economy and late at night to try and find a hotel. And all there was these hotels with bars on the window. So it was horrible. And I stopped the closest cop and I said, "Excuse me, could you point me to the direction of a hotel where you would stay?" So it's
yeah, he had to.
That. So, but what I'm trying to paint is this picture of how things are. So now, if you want to leave your house, you have to have a caretaker there to watch over it to make sure somebody doesn't come in. Now, you also have to make sure that you pay them enough, because the bad guys who want to come in may pay your caretaker to come in and do their business while you're gone. So you have to make sure. So it's just a whole kind of thing. And so it's very different. The lack of just civilized treatment with some people to another. I had to laugh when people would get upset about a barking dog when I came to the United States. Barking dog, they'll call me when it meows. I mean, a barking dog barks. And where I was, if it wasn't just a barking dog, but I mean, if your dog was aggressive or tried to attack somebody, somebody would just shoot it. I mean, so and this is like, oh my God, I can't believe somebody would do that. Well, that's what happens when you've got a society that doesn't have kind of the
property rights respect
in the law and order and all that kind of stuff. So it can go south really fast. Like going shopping in groups of 80 at Gucci and not paying for the products, things like
going on one of those little town raids.
Right.
So we're going to go raid a Gucci today.
Yeah. So, so do you see what we're descending to? I mean, that's the kind of stuff that would happen in other places. We would worry when there was one or a group of 4 organized thieves who went to do a jewelry rob or a bank robbery. And now we have these mobs of 80 people who will go to stores, expensive stores in California, and this is now commonplace, and it's okay, you don't see them really trying to take care of that business. Let me bring you back to, I was in Philly last year, and I went to a CVS, a drugstore.
Oh yeah,
around the corner.
They're very rarely stocked nowadays in places like Philadelphia.
To try to get something I needed. I'm from Colorado, right? So I get there and I go, and I'm looking for really. This is not a plug for any kind of, but it's a lotion. Just a common Aveeno lotion.
Yeah.
They are behind lock and key, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what kind of place am I in where a $6 lotion or an $8 bottle of lotion is under lock and key? So that tells you a lot about different groups in society. So we don't want to descend into something like that, and it's very easily done. So it's important that we stand for law and order, that we care about our country and our freedom, and that we don't look the other way when people are doing the wrong things.
Well, it sounds like you're being very offensive towards upper middle class white girls complaining about their conditions.
What about my emotions and my feelings? Okay.
What about my lotion?
Good point, though. Normally, it's just the Hennessy they have behind lock and key in the Sudafed. Go to a. You can always tell when you're in a bit of a, let's say, trashy town when the Sudafed is behind lock and key. Because
whoa!
What?
That is anti-white racism.
Okay, same thing with the Hennessy there, bruh. And if you get some places, you go, it's the Hornitos. Who knows? Okay.
My goodness, you are getting racially charged fast, aren't you?
But you know what? I want to bring you back to some other things that were true revelations when I got here. More stories on that. I also could not believe that we had these little boxes. I don't see them around that much anymore, where you could get a newspaper and you would put a quarter in it and it would open and you could get your newspaper. And the first thing I saw when I saw that was the first thing I thought was, wait a minute, I put a quarter in, but I have access to all the newspapers.
Yeah.
How does that work? And I could not wrap my head around this country that was founded, where you could run things on the honor system, the virtues of citizenship, the fact that you have the self-restraint of not taking all the newspapers just because you can. And that just didn't exist where I was from. Honestly, and it's because it was the lands of the haves and the have-nots. I mean, most people didn't have much. So the first entrepreneuring 5-year-old, 6-year-old that could, shine some shoes and get a quarter. And, I'm not going to change it to that currency of those countries. But imagine, shine some shoes and get a quarter, would plop that quarter in the box full of newspapers, open that little front thing, pull out all the newspapers, and head on out to the street and go, "Diario!" and go ahead and sell all the newspapers and make some more money. That's just the way things are elsewhere. So do you see what the lack of perspective can you don't see the kinds of things that would happen elsewhere if you've never seen them here because it's been so clean and wholesome.
Yeah, the one that really strikes me the most as to the lack of perspective is when I'm talking with, I'll talk with plenty of different students, different stripes. Like, I'll talk to plenty of conservatives, like people that truly think that they're full-blown capitalists, and I'm like, you're capitalist in only the governmental sense, but you're not an actual capitalist kind of thing. I get very snarky on that one, but the one that I actually truly have the biggest problem with and truly try the hardest to work with and keep my temper is when people say, you should not have to work to survive. You should not have to. That's funny. Yeah, no, I will meet students that legitimately think they have a right to not work if they don't want to. They and one of these students looks like he's actually one of the reasons why I had to stop doing this, because I got a little bit mean at times. But he's a very unhealthy looking fellow, very behind mask mandates and vaccine mandates. And one day I pointed out, I said, "Look, man, I understand why you're afraid. You are fully aware that you have many comorbidities, and if I get you sick, you might be injured. But what's going on here is you have made conscious decisions that have put you in this place." He tells me that we have no need, that he should not have to work to survive. I ask him, I go, do you ever actually go out and try to take care of yourself physically? And he's like, no, he plays lots of video games and stuff like that. I'm like, well, look, I love video games too, but you have to take care of yourself. You have to contribute. And he genuinely thinks he has a right to sit on his couch or on his chair or whatever and play video games and not have to do anything for the rest of his life. And this is just kind of like a microcosm of it, because I ask him, I'll go, why do you think you shouldn't have to work? He goes, well, it's just wrong that you should, we are the quote unquote, and this is where it gets me every time, we are the richest country on planet Earth. We should be able to take care of people.
Country on account of what? So see, I think this is where this is where the lack of information comes from, and where you have to baby step them back to the information. And you do that through questions. So if you're like, okay, I agree. If you don't want to work, you shouldn't have to work. Okay. So if you don't work, how are you going to feed yourself?
Oh,
and then, you just walk them step by step by step. And it's, it'll be, of course, the government will feed you and, all this kind of, so then you go to, okay, where does the government get its money? And so, because the government has no money of its own, the government has to literally rip it off legally from the people who do work to then give it to whatever they want to give to. So, which isn't, whatever. But the issue is you walk them back to somewhere, somebody has to produce that wealth. And let's not, we can call it wealth and people go, oh my God, wealth. Yes, take it away. It's wealth. But the money, the substance with which to purchase that which you need to survive.
Yeah. How can you draw from the system if you can't contribute?
The Liberty Revolt.
Anyway, that was fun.
Oh, we still got another. Sorry, I do. That last one, because you're more libertarian.
I am.
Hey,
Be sure to
You
listen
know
to
that.
Faking the Truth.
I'm
Faking the
Jason
Truth.
O'Brien with
Jason
social
O'Brien.
media level fake.
Social media
Monday
level
through
fake.
Thursdays at
Bucky
3
can't
p.m.
hear us, can
right
you?
here on KHNC.
No, he can't hear us.
Thanks for hanging out with me in the live stream, guys. I am like third wheeling hard.
Yes, Bucky, you are third reeling so hard.
Mute these folks. Look at them. Look at them trying to talk over me like this. Anyways, I'm going to hop in on this next one. You know, I actually do have the power to mute Kevin at any time. It's part of the reason I brought him on, though, is because he's a talker. He's a monologuer. He just goes. And it's it's great for helping me kind of come up with content in the mornings. But on the other side of that coin, we end up fighting for mic space all the time. Yeah. We end up fighting over mic space all the time. But
And I win because my voice is sexier.
Mine is just like,
no, we're not gonna listen to this guy anymore. I apologize for Kevin.
Brent loves me.
It's hard to keep him muted. It really is hard to keep him muted. And we ran out of paper bags for that face. Good Lord. But we are trying to redeem the live stream by putting as much Bucky Dillon in it as we can and removing some of the Kevin from the show. This guy keeps trying to unmute himself. It's not going to happen. Not today, sir. Bucky is in the control room. Kevin is awesome. Man, I missed yesterday's show where everybody was giving Bucky some love, really. And I'm curious about this Dan Crenshaw thing. You know, I've actually invited him on the show a couple times. I haven't heard back, though. And I've thought about buying his Fortitude book. When he hit the scene, I really thought that he was the perfect example of what young conservatives were looking up to. I mean, I really looked up to him. I think he's got a very level-headed perspective. And I really appreciate how he talks about why he's voting for everything he's voting for, why he's not voting for whatever legislation he's not voting for. And does those little breakdowns. And he's got a great podcast. He brings on great guests. And I have heard some of the, he voted for red flag laws kind of things. And he came out with an explanation for it. It was something that never ended up coming. It ended up never manifesting in real policy. And he explained how he knew that was never going to manifest in real policy. I can't remember what exactly his reasoning was. I'm going to try to get back to it, though. Keep telling me about this. I want to know. You're listening to the Yvonne and Kevin show right here on 1360 KHNC. And I'm so glad to have control of the mics because I'm going to stop third wheeling now. I have a lot of questions. I'm going to hop right into this. Socialism, obviously the only moral system. If Jesus Christ were alive today, he would be voting for Bernie Sanders. And that's just blatantly obvious because everybody knows that Jesus went around preaching that if you are a godly, loving person, then you would vote for the state to take other people's wealth at gunpoint and hand it out to their preferred constituencies. That's just the kind of guy that Jesus was.
You could try not to straw man it.
hopefully everybody knows that.
But truly, I mean, we're talking about perspectives, and it's interesting because I don't feel like you could ever accomplish a great, genuine perspective. I mean, there's so much history, and we are so limited in our capacity to understand the world around us. I mean, you could study history your entire life. You're never going to scratch the surface of what has happened. The best you can do is try to recognize some of the patterns that have repeated themselves across time, and some of the warnings or signals that the trends. if you could try to notice the trends of history and try to make an informed position that way. And I mean, that's really what this show is about. I mean, you guys hear it all the time. You hear, I have little guest celebrities come give me a shout outs in various languages, or sometimes just in plain old boring racist English, and and tell you guys that the Liberty Revolt is founded on strategies to engage in the culture and by developing a better understanding of history, policy, economics, as well as doing in-depth policy breakdowns and discussing how public policy actually manifests ramifications in the world. And this kind of coincides with Perspectives 101, because it seems like those are the things, the reoccurring themes that come up in these speeches and these little get-togethers that you have. And it's a great place to kind of further that kind of knowledge. Again, just give a shout out to this event you have, when it is and where people can find it.
Sure, we have events usually on first and third Wednesdays, and we have one coming up this Wednesday with Juliana Day and Dr. Tom Peril on the abortion industry in Colorado. So they'll be talking somewhat about that, how precious life is, and a lot of surrounding topics around that. And it's important that people learn about a lot of things about this, about Colorado water, about where, how ranchers work to produce beef. There's just so many different topics that are important. And this one is important for people to go to with an open mind and an open heart, because these are our own children.
Yeah. And it's very important to especially be hearing, because hearing these stories at a community level, you hold it at Message of Life
Ministries in Loveland.
Message of Life Ministries over there in Loveland. These are within our community, and one of the big failings we have now is a breakdown of our community, and I think that plays into perspective, because I'm trying to figure this out in my head, right? I'm trying to put this puzzle together of life. And one of these pieces is going to be, why is it that so many young people have lost perspective? Because that wasn't always the case. Like, you always had your rebellious youngsters, but it wasn't that there was a lack of perspective, right? And I think that, one of the things is that I used to be able to talk to my Grandpa Joe. And the thing about Grandpa Joe was that when I was in high school, he sadly passed away, I think, when I was 16. But, looking back on it, part of like the respect the inherent respect that comes with it is that when I was in high school being a little crapper, at the same age that I was at, he was in the military fighting the Axis forces in World War II, right? Grandpa Vic was in the Air Force at a young age. There is. And when you were looking at the 50s and 60s, there was always a perspective of, look, my father, when he was 16, 17, 18, was signing up to go storm the beaches of Normandy or Iwo Jima or fighting Guadalcanal or one of those. Yet now it's my great-grandfather, my long-dead grandfather, I think we as a society, and if you look at the culture, it is no longer a culture of kind of like adults teaching children. It's not, you don't have adults making shows for kids. You don't have adults making shows for teenagers anymore. You have teens making shows for teens. You have kids. Like, if you look at what's going on with Twitch and YouTube, you have young people making shows for young people. They remove any and all perspective out of it, because where do you get perspective if you yourself cannot experience it? You get it from your elders. You get it from your community. You get it from these things that we have started to really crush and eliminate as a young society.
And you have the government making shows for you.
Yep.
So it's very important to understand that when you say that young people have a lack of perspective, well, some of it they come by naturally, because again, living in a life so long, but some of it is persuaded to. So they have been persuaded to this they have a lack of perspective, and then they're persuaded further down the line to not fully understand how things work. And it's truly sad, and it's very detrimental to a society. Now we have the changing of history, the taking down of statues. So if we're over time removed from those realities that can teach us something. So we've got the problem of time, right? At least we had the benefit of history books, of statutes. You know, who was this guy? Well, he was this guy, and he was with those guys, and maybe that wasn't
Yeah.
right, and he was with these guys. But there's when you then eliminate the information with which you can breach that gap of time to understand why things happened and how to learn from them and how to keep from making the same mistakes, then somebody doesn't want us to have that knowledge, and they want us to make a mistake that was done previously. Which one? Something that happened maybe in Europe. Something that was done maybe for power and control. So you cannot have informed citizenry if you're going to squash freedom.
Yeah.
You have to, and I'm going to make this comparison, and it's really kind of ugly, but it's really real. Having worked in a profession where I came face to face with a lot of abusers, many domestic abusers, it's as if this stuff was written in a handbook. You know, they all did the same thing. And a tyrannical government, what I'm seeing right now, does the same thing that domestic abusers do to their victims.
Yes.
And when I see this parallel, because I have seen that stuff, it's really eye-opening to the fact that there is no difference. You either have freedom or you have somebody telling you what to do, when you can do it, when you can't do it, when you can fly, when you can't fly, when you can go to school, when you can have your job, you know, based on whether you're vaccinating or masking or, oh my goodness, you know. So we are 2 years down the road with this thing. We understand it. You know, one of the big lies is if you vax, you can't get it, you can't pass it along. Well, that's a lie.
A blatant lie, and it's a part of the gaslighting that's really become prominent within our media the last couple of years. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Manipulation Report here on 1360 KHNC.
Higher rates, lower rates, negative rates, bail-ins, bailouts, and so much.
This kind of interest. And so we go into the break, and then they start having conversations, and I start having conversations. Hey, actually, you guys are the ones being left out because I'm having real group conversations in here. Yeah.
We love you, Bucky. We love you.
Stop it.
We just got to figure out a better way to set this up so that
We need a system.
Can you verify this for me right now? I mean, this should be right, but is this who
What
wrote
was it?
this?
Yeah. So, have you guys watched the Joe Rogan, Dr. Robert Malone podcast? I started, I think I got about halfway through it. Very dense. I've heard a lot of people talking about it. And this conversation we're having about government and systems of control, and it all really does rely on controlling perspectives and controlling narratives. Maybe I'll lead into the next segment talking about this. It remind me
I
of
love
that,
it. I'd love to just
whole
insert it
scenario.
and to cherish and
Yeah. Gosh, sometimes it can be hard doing a radio show with three people. You almost just
Definitely.
you don't want to just talk over each other.
We
You wanna
can
just
definitely
be able
close
to
on that,
kind of have organic
because that's a
conversation.
great quote.
And especially since I'm operating the board and I'm just like in this other room, totally disconnected all by myself. And I'm so glad that I got you guys hanging out here with me because
Bucky, because no one really enjoys
it's
you.
more exciting for me. I'm glad that we're getting the live stream kind of back.
Bucky doesn't have
Called
a
in,
speaker.
or was
What?
it- Bucky doesn't what?
I don't know if Bucky can hear me because I don't know if he has his speakers on.
Oh yeah,
See,
City.
I lost Brent. I don't know how I lost Brent. Yeah, we're gonna actually talk about the Malone thing. So I'm going through. I'll tell you guys. That's the music on the radio. I know. Best
Welcome
music
back.
on the radio. Back like a vertebrae.
back like a quack. Let's go.
No, this does remind me. You guys are talking about systems of control and government, and I don't know. Have you guys been watching the Dr. Robert Malone Rogan podcast? I made it like halfway through it, and when he starts talking about the trusted news initiative that was kind of organized and put forward by these governments, and the horizontal integration of big media, big tech, and government propaganda, and it's all being backed and funded and propped up by like corporate big pharma interests and all of these other things. I mean, it really is. And I've said this, and I'm going to say it again. The whole system is rigged. Our whole system, from the democracy to our media, to tech, to pharma, it is all rigged at the behest of the powerful, at the behest of those who banking, at the behest of those who want to just catalyze themselves as a parasitic elite class living at the top of the pyramid here. I mean, we were talking about how the Federal Reserve, they erect this Federal Reserve as a way to artificially navigate us out of depressions and recessions. And in doing so, they give this pseudo-private, pseudo-public entity the ability to inflate the currency, which is essentially just a way for them to transfer money from the masses to themselves to pay off their preferred interests and constituents, and then let it ripple out in the economy and wreck things. They can create these, they can artificially create depressions and recessions because they can just, by engaging in expansionary monetary theory or contractionary monetary policy, they can create a system in which people feel like they're flourishing. They take out these loans, and then they can constrict the money supply, and they know there's a certain percentage of people that are going to default on those loans, and the banks and the wealthy can seize their assets, right? And not only can they do that, they can plunge you into a depression, and then they can say, well, the only way out of it is we need these big government expansionary welfare programs to bail you out. And it's just this system where they can just systematically seize more and more control over and over and over. Hayek called it the road to serfdom, and it really does feel like that's what we're on. And I'm trying. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I don't want to act like we're totally screwed. But all of our institutions just seem like they're inherently designed to totally screw you.
Interesting you asked that. If I have heard that or seen that, it's on my list. I can't wait to get a few minutes to listen to that one. But
it's crazy.
I think one of the American English expressions that I embrace the most since I came here is the follow the money. And really, if you learn that should be your mantra. Follow the money. Yeah. If you really follow it, you can see how things got to what they're, what's really happening. And there is if you go to openthebooks.com, this is by Adam, and I won't even try to pronounce his name, Andrzejewski or something. It looks Polish to me. And he has dedicated his life to public service exposing government corruption. Openthebooks.com. It is such a revelation to see what he has done to be able to track the money and where it all goes. And yes, that's how we get here.
I think that, it's terrifying to me watching the Robert Malone thing because, like, I know I have been saying this for a little bit, but I'm like, if you want to ask the question of why we're, they say trust the science, they don't follow science, all this other stuff, I go, there's a lot of people with vested financial interests in continuing this. There's a lot of power at stake here.
Absolutely. This is the perfect crisis for those that want to consolidate power, for those that want to consolidate control over the narrative. I mean, the fact that the guy who has the patents for creating mRNA vaccines is taken off of Twitter for questioning the narrative.
Yeah,
right?
well,
he's knocked off LinkedIn for suggesting that perhaps we should tranche out vaccines to the elderly and those in need, and not just make it so everybody has to, for even acknowledging that natural immunity exists and is effective.
Yeah, I apologize, Bucky. Didn't mean for the middle of my sentence to interrupt the beginning of yours. Anyways, what's terrifying to me is that I was kind of saying these things, and I was saying these things existed, these connections existed for the longest time, and then just having Robert Malone come out here and completely confirm it is kind of the, I knew it was going to happen, but at the same time, you hope it doesn't happen, right? You hope that what you see as the incentives of corruption and stuff like that aren't the actual ones.
Well, and I'll take it a step further. As a linguist and in communications and all that, words matter.
Yep.
Okay. And who controls the words and the speech controls everything. And one of the things that really gets to me is the term "the science." There is no "the science." We don't say
Yes,
the.
there is.
We don't
His name
say.
is Tony Fauci.
Well, yeah, in that case.
Fauci Harris,
Yeah.
2024.
But there is no the literature or the engineering. Follow the engineering. So engineering and science and literature and everything, these are fields. And in science, the whole way you do science is by questioning science and finding new things and debunking things. So in Spanish, el gato, the cat. It means there's only one. And gatos or cats means there's many. So if you talk about the science, you've now, with words, you have now created a mentality that there is only one, and you must follow this one. And oh, by the way, who's giving you the one to follow? So this is, I'm sorry, we're military, so we know what psyops means.
Yes.
This is mind control. So psyops for the civilians out there is psychological operations, and it is being done every day to control people's thought. And so, no, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. These are very real things. And I just explained to you how simply, and there's, what was it, Foucault or these other, in France and stuff that talked about the language, and he who controls the language controls the society. So this is a real thing. So we have to be careful about that. And yes, the science is about one person perhaps in one type of agenda.
Science is a process, not a thing. You're listening
the whole process of science is to question science.
The Science Report on 1360 Agency.
Hi, my name is Mindyfaulkner with Harmony Senior Referrals. My number is 720-934-7740. We are a senior placement agency that helps families find the right assisted living, memory
I'm
care,
very
and
sorry
independent living
that
for
you
their
guys
loved
have to
ones.
continue listening to these people who are questioning the science, questioning the CDC, the WHO, the highest authority, the highest concentration of experts that we have on the. And I defer to the experts all of my personal liberties and decisions. I think they should just all be made for me, frankly. I mean, you wouldn't trust the guy mopping the deck to steer the ship. He's not the captain. I think we need to bring back the scientific monarchy. What do you say? Is this what we're going to do? Is this the path we're going in? Well, we have the she questions everything and everyone. Sounds pretty racist to me, frankly. Yeah, this is the final segment, so I'm going to go ahead and thank you guys for hanging out and listening with us today. I look forward to seeing you guys tomorrow. I think this is going to be an everyday thing. We might just live stream the second hour every day. So how do you break free? How do you gain the perspectives to stand up against this? Because, I mean, we've seen over and over that when people are able to freely communicate, they tend to sort out the good ideas from the bad ideas. We do have a situation in which through the Trusted News Initiative, and then there's another thing that really terrifies me. What was I going to say? To the Trusted News Initiative, they've determined that whatever Tony Fauci and the CDC and the WHO say is fact, and you're not allowed to question it. And if you do question it, it doesn't matter how qualified you are. You could be the man that literally invented the mRNA vaccine, and they're going to try to politically destroy you and erase you from the public narrative. And what really scares me is not only are they doing all this, it comes out that India in one of their cities was actually able to get control of this infection through preventative measures and alternative therapeutics and things. And then Joe Biden, our fearless and wise leader, goes out there and has a meeting with him, and days after, they will not disclose what they did. Like, not only it has come out that through the government forcibly shutting down alternative therapeutics, that we have had an excess of 500,000 deaths due to that alone, due to them suppressing medicine. This isn't about your health. It's not about your health.
Never was.
It never was.
It's about money.
It's about money. It's about control.
So you're so right, because when you said suppressing, so when they suppress information, they're censoring information. And it was back to, if you don't have access to good information, the only information you have is the information that they give you. So therefore you can only think whichever way you can think based on the information at hand. So that's really how that all happens. And that censoring and controlling of information, those are signature things of totalitarian and tyrannical regimes. So the freedom to question things, and whether it's questioning medical things, whether it's questioning whether we had a free and fair election. And by the way, from somebody who has been in countries where all that stuff is really messed up, I see some things I really don't like, but that's a whole different topic. But it's important to be able to question, to have the freedom to question.
What's your so
hang on. I don't want to say that Jason was right. I don't want to have to say that Jason was right, but I'm beginning to think Trump was a total plant. And here's why. The whole cornerstone for the Trusted News Initiative was the Russia thing. The whole Russia hoax was the seed that they utilized to justify this whole, well, we have to protect our democracies, and therefore we need to control the media, because it's through big tech and big media that Russia was able to subvert our election. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm turning my mic off. Guys, thanks for having me today.
Yvonne, give us your final thoughts on freedom for the day, Yvonne.
Absolutely. So yeah, you take all sorts of tangents in this thing, but I think the key thing is that freedom. And I'd like to read you this quote because I think it is so important. And it comes from trying times. These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country. But he that stands by it now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolidation with us, that harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. It is dearness only that gives everything its value. Heaven knows how to put proper price upon its goods. And it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Thomas Paine.
We take care of all of your landscaping needs, tree landscaping, hardscape install, maintenance, snow removal, fall and spring cleanup. We also do junk and trash haul away as well. We are your one-stop.
Cool.
Yeah,
thank you for joining us this
Well,
morning, ladies and gentlemen.
thing.
It's been a great show.
As far as the
we really
inflation,
appreciate you.
Here's how that whole thing works, right? They put all of these high welfare programs in place that pay off people not to work, and then the only way businesses can get people back is to raise the wages. And yeah, again, because of all of these government spending programs, inflation nullifies the raise in wages anyways. So they end up right where they were to begin with, but with more dependency and with more control, over businesses and over the sovereignty of individuals. Guys, thanks so much for hanging out with us. I'll be back again. We really do love hanging out with you. I'll see you tomorrow.